I want to bring in now Congresswoman Shontel Brown. She's a Democrat from Ohio and a member of the House Oversight Committee. And Congresswoman, you're one of the members who's going to hear from these Uvalde and Buffalo survivors and their families tomorrow. Why do you think it was important for Congress to hear from them and from the country to hear their testimony?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think it's important because as a person who myself isn't far removed from the impact of gun violence, having lost 3 young Black men in my youth ministry group at my church due to gun violence, I think it's important for other people who may not have these lived experiences to understand the impact that gun violence is having on our communities. In Northeast Ohio, this is not restricted to partisan politics. And I think that when we have these difficult conversations where people, again, who haven't quite walked in the shoes of folks who have been experiencing these losses of tragedies and devastation of lives that are being snatched away, they have to be able to have some compassion and courage. And I think that's what we're missing on the other side of the aisle. So it is my hope that during these difficult but much needed hearings, we can get some perspective to maybe give our folks on the other side of the aisle the courage that they need to pass some laws that many of Americans agree on across the country.
Yeah, it's such a good point that you don't have to have been in a community that had some high-profile mass shooting to have been affected by this. You touched on something I want to explore a little bit more here. I mean, obviously, the House is going to vote on some of your own gun legislation later this week, but we all know the math here. It's got to be the Senate that's going to have to get to 60 votes on something. How do you hope the work you're doing in the House, be it by passing these bills or by holding these oversight hearings, influences the work that's being done in the Senate and the thinking that's being done by the pivotal, 10 or perhaps more Republicans who might have a chance to make history by actually voting on something that could make a difference on gun legislation?
I appreciate that question. It is one that is very heavy on the hearts and minds of people that live here right in Ohio. When we talk about the Senate, I can't miss the opportunity to talk about how important this midterm election is, and where we have someone like Tim Ryan, who is coming from the Congress and hoping to become a member of the Senate, who understands and who supports common sense gun safety legislation. I too myself am a gun owner. I am licensed to carry, and I am not trying to take away people's Second Amendment. I think we need people who share these same principles and values on the side of the Senate, like my good friend Tim Ryan, like my good friend Val Demings, who's also in the Congress, who understands the importance, but also respects the Second Amendment, so that we can just start to move forward and make progress. Too many precious lives are being lost. When I heard the gentleman testify about his mom matters. These children matter. Their lives should not be snatched away because we, as members of the federal government, have not exercised the authority and the power that we have to make our country safer. And it's not the Democrats, it is the Republicans. So it is my hope that these conversations, that these hearings, that these testimonies, these heartfelt, gut-wrenching losses that have impacted now thousands of lives due to the inaction and cowardly behavior of people on the other side of the aisle will give them the courage, the compassion, and the strength to move forward so we can make some real meaningful change in our country. It's long overdue. Enough is enough.
Congresswoman, Chris Murphy's been getting a lot of credit from Republicans who have said he's willing to make a deal here, but that's created some pushback from Democrats who worry that a deal with Republicans to pass something now without those other Democratic senators you're talking about would be too small. Is there a minimum of what you'd be willing to accept from the Senate that you think could still make a difference in this Congress?
I think the American people have spoken when it comes to some of the minimums. Just as you heard the gentleman in your previous piece, raising the age requirement from 18 to 21, the expansion and improvement of background checks. I think those are minimums. We need to make sure that gun owners who have minors in the home are practicing security to make sure that those weapons are safe and secure and that minors cannot have access to them. We also need to do something about straw purchases, people who are buying these weapons without having these background checks, are committing some of the most heinous crimes. I would challenge folks to do the research to figure out how many crimes have been committed by straw purchases. And we need to look at that so we can start holding some of these gun manufacturers accountable. You know, we put safety standards on automobiles, and I think it's time we start implementing some of those standards for our gun manufacturers as well. So there's a lot of things that I think the American people can agree on that we should have the courage and the capacity, and again, and at the very least, the compassion to be able to get done so that we can make our community safer. So those are just a few things that come to mind that I hope that my Republican colleagues can agree upon so that we can start taking some steps towards progress to make our country and our community safer. It is no way that I should have to worry about my nieces and nephews who go to school every day, whether or not they will make it back. There's no way I should have to worry about whether my parents or myself go to the grocery store, whether they'll make it back. There's no way I should have to worry about parishioners going to church to worship their gods and wonder if they're ever going to make it back. These are simple, simple things that will not take away people's right to own their guns and will not impede upon the Second Amendment. And I think after hearing the testimony of these people who have been victims of such heinous tragedies that could have been prevented, hopefully it will give my colleagues across on the other side of the aisle the courage to move forward.